was 7 years old when the German army entered our town Drohobycz in Soviet Ukraine on July 1, 1941. Immediately they started persecuting Jews by indiscriminately robbing and killing us, forcing us to wear armband with the Star of David, and confiscated our arms, radios, gold, etc. They encouraged Ukrainian thugs to enter Jewish home, beat the inhabitants, and take whatever they wanted. In fact, it did not take much encouragement. My maternal grandfather was one of these victims of the beating and died a few days later. In August 1942, in our small apartment lived 9 people: my parents, my sister and I, and Rivka, my father, sister and her 2 small children, my maternal grandmother, Sarah, and my paternal grandfather, Isaac. Rivka's husband had been drafted to the Soviet army. Sarah's husband was killed by the thugs in June 1941. None of these people could fend for themselves and fully depended on my father for food and shelter. The apartment was crowded and food was rationed and scarce. My father bartered items for food, including his wedding ring for a loaf of bread. My Gentile nanny Yancia, who loved me very much, would visit us from time to time and bring some bread and milk. She offered to take me with her for a few days to feed me and give me a bath and bring me back home. After a couple of days, my sister Irena, who missed me a great deal, cried and begged my mother to bring me back home so she could play with me. Mother took off the Star of David armband and walked with Irena to Yancia's place. Then they found me sitting in a corner crying and Yancia on the bed in labor. Mother helped her deliver the baby, which turned out to be stillborn. We stayed there overnight. Then next morning, Yancia's husband came from his night shift and said that there was an Aktion in town. Germans were killing and gathering Jews for deportation. He was very upset seeing us there and said that if the Nazis found us in his home, they would kill all of us. He gave my mother, Irena, and me some food and told us to hide in the forest. We started walking through a wheat field toward forest. My mother noticed a hole in the ground and decided we should hide there. She wore a raincoat that the color of ripe wheat. The 3 of us lie down and ourselves with coat. There were other Jews hiding in the fields and the forest. When the Germans found a group of Jews hiding, we heard shouts and dogs and barking, and people were begging and praying for mercy. Children were crying. The Germans escorted the group out, and there was silence, a deadly silence. We lay horrified, expecting to be next. My sister and I cried. Mother tried to keep us quiet and cover us with her body. This lasted for 3 or 4 hours. Then the horrific noise stopped. We waited until dusk, and then Mother decided to walk back to Jancia's house. As we approached the road, a German soldier with a big dog came toward us. We were terrified. He looked at us for a few minutes, which seemed like hours. Then he turned around and walked away. Perhaps he noticed my blonde, blue-eyed, pretty little sister. After spending another night in Jancia's house, Father, who had stayed in the workers' dormitory overnight, came and took us home. Our place was empty and terribly disarray. Feathers were torn, bedding were everywhere, the furniture was broken, and all valuables were gone. A neighbor told us later that when the Germans and their helpers missed our place, a 10-year-old Ukrainian boy whose name was Kozio ran after them to show them where our relatives lived. If Jancia hadn't taken me to her home, if my sister hadn't convinced Mother to go, and if the German soldier on the road had been accompanied by another soldier, I wouldn't be here to tell this story.